Around 3 months ago, I decided it was time to stop playing the Caro-Kann and swap to a different opening. By the time you're watching this video, my Sicilian Defense repertoire video is probably out by now, so you'll know that I swapped to the Sicilian Defense. Changing openings in chess is generally something I wouldn't recommend to anyone. I swapped from the London system to the Catalan just over a year ago, and I can tell you that it took me around 6 months to start playing those positions accurately. So if you do want to change your openings, you better have a good reason to, because it might take you up to 6 months to actually start playing that opening to the same level that you played your old one. But the question is, what does a good reason look like? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be going over all of the reasons that I stopped playing the Caro-Kann and why I opted for the Sicilian Defense instead. Hopefully this video can be useful for you making decisions in your own chess journey, and provide some insight on how you might tackle a similar situation. Just before we do continue though, the videos on this channel would not be possible without our sponsor, ChessMind.ai. ChessMind.ai. ChessMind.ai is a next-generation AI-powered chess improvement platform who also happens to be the sponsor of today's video. Not only does ChessMind have completely free puzzles, but they also have a wide range of courses you can select from for less than $5 per month. All of the courses are handcrafted by Chilean Grandmaster Mauricio Flores and are designed to make you a master of any opening variation in around an hour. They perfectly balance top quality theory with ease of learning to take the boring out of any study. Once you've completed these opening courses, you can either play puzzles deriving from said opening, or dive into their AI integrations which quiz your knowledge on what you just learned. The AI acts as a replacement for a coach, asking you to find characteristics of certain positions and explain the advantages and disadvantages. You can check out ChessMind.ai with my link in the description, where you can get 30% off your subscription. With all that being said, I want to go through this Lichess study I've created for this video. We'll be going through all of the variations in a typical Caro-Kann repertoire, and I'll be going through all of the problem areas that I saw that led me to swap to the Sicilian. So the first variation I wanted to cover was the advanced variation, which comes on move 3 after white plays e5. Now this was an opening that caused me a few problems when I was around 2000 ELO, but it was also a variation that I was able to fix. So after e5, I was playing c5, which is called the Botvinnik-Karls variation. A lot of people play this because it's Gotham Chess's recommendation, and a lot of people started playing chess and then immediately went to that Gotham Chess video where he explains the Caro-Kann. And it's really good. You can see over on the panel down here, this is players 1000, 1200, 1400. So when you're starting to play chess, seeing an opening with a 51% win rate as black and only a 46% win rate as white is going to be very, very appealing. Typically at lower levels, white will play c3, knight c6, knight f3, and bishop g4, and this gets exactly what black wants. After bishop e2, we can play e6, and after h3, takes, and we take down the center, and white has two big weaknesses here. You can also see at the panel below, black now has a 59% win rate here. This would be fantastic if white continued to play this way all throughout your chess journey, but the reality is they won't. Around 2000 ELO, you'll start to see this move a lot more commonly, which is d takes c5, which is objectively just winning for white. The natural move knight c6 doesn't work because of the move f4, and after you play e6 trying to attack this loose pawn, they come in with bishop e3 defending it. The only way that black can win back their pawn is by creating a big weakness in the position with d4, and after bishop f2, we can now take this free pawn back. You can see by the engine evaluation that it does not like this position. It just thinks that this pawn will fall and black won't really get any compensation for it. We can also look at the Lichess database for players around my rating, so you can see 1800 to 2200, and you can see that black only wins 45% of the time here. But if you were paying attention, on move 4, knight c6 is not the best move. The engine wants you to play the move e6. This immediately attacks the c5 pawn and also opens the door for this fork on d7. So after the move bishop e3, we can play knight d7, and there isn't really a way for white to adequately defend both pawns. Except for the fact that there is, because white can just play bishop b5, and now we're not really going to get these two pawns back anytime soon. After knight e7, white will play bishop d4, holding on to both pawns. If you play knight c6, by the way, they'll take, and play b4, so now you're not winning any pawns back. But if you play knight f5, they're also just going to play c3, and you're just not going to win your pawns back. The engine now suggests you play bishop e7, knight f3, and castles, and to be quite honest, in the short term, there is absolutely no way the engine thinks you're getting your pawns back. It is a long slog to get your pawns back, and if you mess up even once throughout that process, you just won't win them back. Now, you can look at the Lichess database and say, okay, black has a 49% win rate, but there's also very limited games here, and I can tell you from experience that these positions are incredibly difficult to play. So what was my fix to all of this? Well, I just had to swap variations completely. So after we have d4 here, d5, e5, I stopped playing c5 immediately and I started playing bishop f5. Now it might just look like my solution to all of this was to switch variations entirely, and whilst that is half true, I was able to keep a couple of themes that I really liked about the Botvinnik cars. So after knight f3, e6, bishop e2, I was able to play c5, which kind of aligns with my old repertoire a lot more. After bishop e3, queen b6, knight c3, and knight c6, these are really good positions that are not only playable online, but over the board as well. Now you might be looking at the Lichess database and seeing that white wins 61% of the time here. That's only because after castles, a lot of people are making this blunder, which is a very natural move of c takes d4, which is +3 for white. So as long as you don't make that blunder and actually look into the theory a little bit, you should be fine. Again, I know it says that white wins 54% of the time, but if you look after knight b5, you can actually just play c4, sacrifice this exchange, and you should be fine in this game as well. And alternatively, if your opponent plays queen e1, it says that white has a pretty good win rate, but you can just, go a few moves further into the theory. By the way, this line, there's no deviations to it. This usually happens 100% of the time if you're playing this variation, so you don't have to study a million lines, and you will get good positions if you actually know the theory. That brings us on to our second variation in the Caro-Kann, which is the exchange variation on move 3, where they play e takes d5. Now I'm going to keep it very short here. There is nothing wrong with the exchange variation. There's basically no problems that it poses. There is one line that we'll actually look into, but essentially you'll get a position that looks something similar to this, and you just use a minority attack to kind of go forwards, and that's your game plan pretty much every time you play against the exchange Caro-Kann. There is this one problem area that I know a lot of people struggle with in the Caro-Kann that I will go over very quickly. So after we get this exchange, there is this move bishop d3, which a lot of people won't give too much thought to. If you play knight f6, there's this move h3 now. And you might be wondering, where does my bishop go in this position? What's kind of funny is that when I first started playing the Caro-Kann, my solution to this was to play bishop e6, and looks like a weird move. The bishop is not staying in there. That was not my plan. After knight f3, I would play queen c8, and the idea is now obvious. After castles, we play bishop f5, and that was my way to kind of transpose into a position that I was comfortable with. This was a problem area in my repertoire for a little bit, but I'll show you guys what I did to kind of fix it. After knight c6, we just get our pieces out where we can, and c3, we want to play g6. Our intention is not at all to play bishop g7. Our intention is actually now to play bishop f5, so after something like bishop f4, we can play bishop f5. If they take, we're going to take back here, but if they don't take, we get rid of the problem piece, and now we can fianchetto the bishop and play like this. If they do take our bishop, however, instead of knight f3, let's say take, we take back with the g-pawn. Now let's say they play something like knight f3, we just play e6, and this is actually a very solid and secure structure in the Caro-Kann that white is going to have a lot of difficulty breaking down. We've also got a lot of flexibility in a position like this. We've got a lot of pieces left on the board. We've got an open g-file. We can even castle into this open g-file, put our king on h8, and have some really good attacking plans down the g-file. And we also have this open c-file as well. What's great about this opening is that it's very difficult for white to break down our central structure, so our king can stay in the middle for quite a bit of time. But this is really a good way to combat this h3 line in the exchange Caro-Kann. In the exchange Caro-Kann, there is also technically the Panov attack, which I don't think is a problem at all. It comes after c4 on move 4, but you just bring both of your knights out, then you pin their knight with your bishop, play e6, and you've got a very solid exchange Caro-Kann looking setup here, and there's really no problems with it. Of course, each of these openings come with their own little intricacies, so I'm not saying that the Panov attack is a straightforward opening, but it's definitely a manageable one and not a reason to actually change your repertoire completely. The same can be said about the accelerated Panov, which happens as early as move 2, where they play c4. You just play d5, or everything trades off in the center, you play knight f6, and you get a position like this, where you're actually just versing a very targetable isolated center pawn, and there is really no difficulty in a position like this for black. The engine also agrees with this. It thinks that black has completely equalized when your opponent plays the accelerated Panov, and I really don't think there's anything to worry about in this kind of variation. The fantasy variation is actually a variation that I didn't study too much. Below 2000 ELO, it's barely ever played by anyone as the white pieces, and when I was above 2000 ELO, I was kind of set on switching away from the Caro-Kann anyway, so I never bothered to learn it. It comes on move 3 where white plays f3. What I like to do against the fantasy is play d takes e, f takes e, and e5. Of course, if they take here, this is a big blunder because you get this check and this triangle. Let's say if g6, you're going to get this classic triangle fork, and white definitely doesn't want to allow that, so they can't take in the center. They'll probably play something like knight f3. Then you just play bishop g4, c3, and knight d7, and you've got a very, very solid position here as black. Of course, this is one of the more complicated openings, so you will need to study it, but there's just plenty of kind of responses for black, and you should be fine in this kind of position. There is no one move or one line from white that is just going to crush black's hopes and dreams. You will have a lot of chances in these kind of games. Also, I've never mentioned this on this channel before, but there is this one really cool line against the fantasy if you're below 2000 ELO. It's technically a terrible line, but below 2000 ELO, I guarantee it'll work 100% of the time, as it did for me. So it's after e4, c6, and obviously the moves in the fantasy. We want to play e6 though. This is a very, very passive move. Just kind of setting up this triangle structure. And 55% of the time, white will play knight c3 here. So I think we're also looking at 1800 to 2200. So if we kind of include all these variations as well, or all these ratings as well, the win rate will be a lot higher for black. But, you know, let's say knight c3. We want to pin this knight. Almost always, I know it says 29% of the time here, I'm convinced it's a lot higher. They will play bishop d2. Now I want to take. After they take back, we take here. The correct move here is knight h3, which is only played 10% of the time. More likely, they're going to play f takes e, and we're going to swing in with this check again. And this is a very good position for black, that black wins 55% of the time. So this is kind of a cool line to play in blitz to try and catch your opponents off guard. Again, higher rated players will not fall for this, but lower rated players definitely will. Now you might think I've spoken very highly of the Caro-Kann in this video, and there's not really a reason to change openings. But this is where everything falls apart for me, and I think this is a good reason enough to change openings out of the Caro-Kann. And it's because of the move knight c3. Now, the move knight c3 forces a move here for black. And trust me, I've spent hours trying to invent some new opening, some way to get around all of this, but you absolutely have to give up your center. There is no way around not playing d takes e4. You'll see the engine is saying, okay, but you can play h6 and a6. These are just moves that don't make your position 100 times worse. They don't improve your position, they don't do anything. So you are absolutely forced to play d takes e, and after knight takes e4, you do actually have a couple of options. The first one we'll look at is the classical with bishop f5. They will most likely play knight g3, and then you'll have to play bishop g3. After knight f6, you'll play e6, h4, you have to play h6 here, and after h5, you bring your bishop back, they'll bring their bishop out, takes, and then you can play something like knight f6. After bishop d2, you'll play something like bishop e7, and after long castles, you might get an opposite side castle game. They are also not forced to play long castles in every variation of the classical variation. Also, I kind of messed up. Knight bd2 is the move that I had in my study here. But after long castles, the problem with these kind of setups, and this is the main reason that I stopped playing the Caro-Kann, your play is so unbelievably predictable in all of these setups where you don't have a d-pawn. This is because the really only way to break out of these kind of positions is through one of two pawn breaks, either c5 or e5. When your play and the entire crux of your opening becomes that predictable, it becomes extremely boring to play. Maybe in rapid games or blitz games or bullet games, this is a completely acceptable opening, but when your opponent is sitting there with 90 minutes on their clock wondering what you're going to do when it's blatantly obvious that you only have two real plans in the position, it gets kind of repetitive. Again, online, this kind of repertoire absolutely works in rapid because time is a big factor. Your opponent is going to run low on time. They're not going to see these plans, even if they know what your plans are and it's still very predictable. Time is a factor. They're going to make mistakes later in the game. But if time is not a factor and your opponent has 90 minutes on the clock, not only are they going to be able to plan very thoroughly for what your attack will be, but you're never going to get them into time trouble either. The exact same thing can be said about the Karpov variation, which comes very similarly to the main line, where instead of bishop f5, you'll play this move knight d7. Now, the idea of knight d7, and by the way, there is this kind of tricky line with queen e2 here, where if you play knight f3, you will just get mated on the 5th move. This has happened to me a million times in Bullet. But a lot of people will play knight f3 after knight f6. They will play knight g3, e6, and you've got this same structure where you don't have a d-pawn, so the only way that you can kind of go forwards, and this is even more boring than the classical variation, by the way, because there's no real option for your opponent to long castle. You have to play one of these moves. You absolutely have to play either e5 or c5 to kind of progress in a position like this. Now, the best way that I've found to kind of make this at least a little bit interesting is after something like c3, we can play something like b6, and we at least get the bishop open this way. But again, even after that, let's say rook e1, bishop b7, and let's say knight e5, to open this bishop, you still need to play c5. It's still an extremely predictable move, and after something like c5, let's say takes and takes, you know, the engine is saying this is a good position for black, but I mean, first of all, white can just force a queen trade, which is especially annoying when you're versing someone that's a little bit lower rated than you that you know you should be winning against, because it's much harder to beat someone without a queen. So again, you get into these positions where you don't have the d-pawn, where your plans are extremely obvious because you absolutely have to strike with either c5 or e5. Now, the plans are a little bit different in two variations that we'll look at now. And this first one is after takes, you can immediately play knight f6. You can skip this whole knight d7 idea and immediately go for knight f6. This happens in the final two variations, where after they take, they might not take, by the way. If they don't take, again, you have similar problems where, hang on a second, we don't have that d-pawn, so we're in the exact same boat. But if they do take, this gives us some more options. Now, the most popular option by far is the Tartakower, which honestly, I don't mind these double pawns at all. That is not the problem for me in the Tartakower. What is the problem for me is that every single player in over-the-board chess will be booked to a T when you're playing the Tartakower. This is by far the most studied variation for white in the Caro-Kann. So after something like c3, bishop d6, bishop d3, castles, knight e2, rook e8, you're going to get very, very annoying positions where your opponent will just be in theory forever. So after something like queen c2, which attacks your pawn, you're going to have to play something like h4, castles, h4, sorry, I meant h5 before, bishop h7 check. You get these really, really annoying positions where it's very clear that you're not the one attacking. You're going to be defending the entire game. You don't really get the right to attack. And if we skip a couple of moves into the future, you often get into these positions where you have to play one move. The only move to play here to be level, and we've followed the top engine line for the entirety of this game, by the way, is just a move that gives up a pawn. We have to play f5, allow them to take, and suddenly we don't have an attack. We've got a bunch of weaknesses in the position, and we're down a pawn. So I don't really see how we're going to try and play for a win or play for any kind of exciting game in this kind of opening. By the way, it's also worth mentioning that you can't take this knight here because this is a fork on the king and the rook. So we can even go back. You know, we don't have to play bishop e6 in this kind of position. You know, we could have played king g8 to kind of avoid all this, but we're still not really attacking. We don't have anything really exciting to play for, and especially when your opponent is going to know theory in over-the-board games pretty much 99% of the time, this isn't just a fun, flexible opening to play with the black side. Now, when I started playing the Caro-Kann defense, the Bronstein-Larsen looked like one of the most stupid openings in the world to me. The engine also hates it, plus 0.8, but I just thought, you know, I went through a lot of engine lines and I looked at a lot of positions and it just didn't seem very good for black. But after I kind of went on this crusade of looking for a solve to this knight c3 problem, where black doesn't really have any kind of flexible variations to play, the Bronstein-Larsen actually seems like one of the better options to play as black if you actually want to play some interesting chess. In reality, it's actually quite similar to this chapter 6 that we looked at with the exchange Caro-Kann, where you actually have this G file to work with. And in a lot of ways, it is good for the same reasons, but it's also theoretically unsound. But again, a positive of the Bronstein-Larsen is that your opponent will probably not know the theory to it. So if you're having the same problem, or if I wanted to persist with the Caro-Kann and not kind of switch to the Sicilian defense, this would have been my solve. playing an opening that puts you down a plus 0.8 disadvantage as the black side, that would have been my solve to not getting these boring positions out of the Caro-Kann. Now we can kind of flick through these moves to see what a position would look like in the Bronstein-Larsen. After knight f3, bishop g4, bishop e2, we play e6. We have a lot of kind of flexibility on where this bishop might end up. Sometimes it goes to g7 even. After castles, knight d7, we're getting some more pieces in the game, and it's very obvious we just kind of go for this long castles and opposite side castle attack. It's not sound, I think that goes without saying, that white should be better, but if white makes one single mistake, and if black knows their theory, like decently, these are going to be decent positions and relatively flexible, fun positions for the black side. After knight h4 though, h5, h3, bishop d6, you can't take this, I believe, because after this is hanging. If this, we can take it. We've got a lot of sacrificing ideas. Like, it does get very fun for the black side if white doesn't know what they're doing. But I can't imagine this lasting forever. I think that if I got, a couple hundred elo better at chess, I would probably regret learning as much Bronstein-Larsen theory as I did, because it simply isn't theoretically sound, and I think eventually people are just going to be able to solve it. So when it really comes down to it, I stopped playing the Caro-Kann for a few key reasons. Firstly, it was incredibly difficult to catch your opponent by surprise in some popular variations. After knight c3, there are very few branches of theory for you to actually learn. So white has an easy time prepping against the Caro-Kann in classical games. Secondly, there was almost no flexibility on what you can actually be doing in the middle game. Your plans are very two-dimensional, and even though the Caro-Kann is a very solid opening, you are very predictable. Thirdly, I just thought the Caro-Kann started to get a little bit boring. You almost never get these crazy attacks in the Caro-Kann, and the entirety of the game is usually spent trying to carve out some kind of positional edge that might not even win you the game. Of course, I think for most players below 2000 elos, these are non-problems, and they shouldn't be reasons to stop playing the Caro-Kann at all. But I feel I wanted to grow more as a chess player, and the Caro-Kann seemed to be holding me back in that regard. I wasn't being flexible, and I wasn't really allowed to be creative with the opening. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'd be super interested to hear your experiences on the opening and the problems that you've had to solve over the years. But apart from that, I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one.